Hey, real progressives, this is Jackie Lukeman. And I thought I'd do something a little bit interesting today because this has been really weighing on my mind and my heart, this issue that we're dealing with right now with a couple of black leaders coming out and supporting Hillary Clinton. And I wanted to try to put my thoughts on the Clinton legacy into perspective from a progressive standpoint, from a black person's standpoint, and to show you what I've really lived and why I feel the way I do, not just about Hillary Clinton and Clinton policies, but about the need for real progressive change in our government that affects and improves the lives of every group of people. I am standing in front of the street that I grew up on. I'm not going to tell you the name of the street, but I can tell you that if you can see some of the buildings in the background, some of the buildings are boarded up. It's really blighted now. When I grew up on this street, I'm 48 years old. When I grew up on this street, there were kids everywhere. This was a working class neighborhood. There was a lady who lived in this first apartment building here with the blue awning. Her name was Mrs. Thomas. She's long since passed. She would make sure to watch all of the kids coming home from school in the neighborhood. We'd have to stop by her house, check in with her, get a little snack, a little piece of candy, and then go and do our homework and come outside and play. And all of the working families on the street would give her a little piece of change for watching their kids. But we had a community, and there was so much good stuff going on in this neighborhood. In the park where I am standing, my family started having community cookouts here, and it caught on. So during the summer, bands would come out here and play, and we would be out here in the park playing, and it was a great neighborhood. And then during the Reagan administration, he decided to cut the funding for federal mental health institutions. Now, Southeast DC has one of the largest and oldest mental health hospitals in the country. It was actually a Civil War hospital. It's St. Elizabeth's Hospital. We always knew it was there. We never had a problem with it because the people who were in the hospital were being taken care of. When Reagan cut the budget for federal mental health services, every mental health hospital that was federally funded had to cut back on staff. So what they did was they released nonviolent mental patients into the communities during the day. And they would hope that people would come back at night to get their medication. And they had to release these people during the day because they didn't have the money to feed them anymore. So what happened in our neighborhood, where we didn't have homeless people before, all of a sudden we had homeless people. And I do mean it was like overnight. We had businesses in our neighborhood, small businesses. We had a McDonald's up on the avenue where the retired people used to go to have their coffee every morning. We had a Safeway. We had a grocery store in the neighborhood that everybody walked to and went to. When St. Elizabeth's had to release the nonviolent mental patients that they couldn't feed and medicate during the day anymore, all of those businesses closed because the poor people who were not getting the mental health treatment they needed were in the neighborhood wreaking havoc. I couldn't blame them because they didn't know any better. They weren't getting their medication. But nobody cared about the damage that was done to our neighborhoods. The McDonald's closed. The grocery store closed. Other small businesses closed. The interesting thing was that the closure of these businesses was blamed on the drug trade that was going on at the same time that the federal mental health institutions were being pretty much shuttered, for lack of a better word. So when the businesses were closing, the local papers were blaming the thefts and the vandalism on the kids who were either selling or using drugs. But that wasn't it. It was the mental patients who were not getting the treatment that they needed. So Reagan's mental health policies, the crack epidemic, the rise in militarized policing, all happened at the same time. So please understand, I just don't have this beef with Hillary Clinton. No, this problem in a lot of our communities across this country didn't start with her. It actually started with Richard Nixon and the war on drugs. It was made worse by Ronald Reagan and some of his policies. The problem with the Clintons was the supposedly first black president, he didn't help. He and his wife advanced policies that made the situation even worse. What do I mean by that? When crack hit the streets, and we already had, like I said, poor people who were not getting the treatment, the mental health treatment they needed, they became addicted to crack. So then the people who were former mental patients were now addicts. And then you had innocent people in the neighborhood who, because of Reagan's policies, there were no jobs that people could get. There were no opportunities. The summer jobs program for kids in this city that I took part in, and that everybody I knew who I went to high school with took part in, that was eliminated. So you had a bunch of kids who had no way to make money, who were used to working. And you had this drug on the street that what do kids do when they go to a party and they experiment with alcohol or drugs? Nobody knew how addictive this stuff was. Nobody knew what was coming. So you had a bunch of people who just by happenstance got caught up in this crack game. And then they saw how much money they could make. There were no opportunities, no jobs, not making the best decisions. But what happened that made this a much worse situation was that when the people who were buying the drugs, which I guarantee you were mostly white people who didn't live in this neighborhood, and I know that because I was a member of the neighborhood watch group that sat on the corner in my neighborhood and watched white people from Maryland and Virginia drive onto our little back street that was out of the way, that you wouldn't have known was there unless you lived there or unless you were coming to buy drugs. I watched these people drive down our street, buy drugs, and drive away. Never got arrested. We would sit there and take their license plate numbers down because they were coming into our neighborhoods and committing crime. And we took those lists of license plate numbers to the police, and the police told us they couldn't do anything about the people who were coming into our neighborhoods and committing crime. But what the police did do was bring out the National Guard and act in a militarized manner and arrested everybody out here who was in the game, whether it was somebody who really was committing a violent act, which, yeah, we absolutely wanted those people arrested, or even if it was the low-level runner. Everybody in the hood got arrested. None of the white people who were buying drugs got arrested. They got treatment. We got prison. And when we got prison, we got 5 to 10 for a gram of crack. And if a white person got arrested, they got 5 to 10 months of probation for 10 grams of powder cocaine, because that was the way the 94 crime bill sentencing provisions was outlined. So if you were arrested in relation to a crack offense, you got a higher charge and more time. That was what the Clintons did. They also criminalized people who were convicted of drug offenses, even low-level nonviolent drug offenses, and made it impossible for them to get any kind of assistance when they did their time. I thought in this country that if you committed a crime and you served your sentence, you have paid your debt to society. Not according to the Clintons. Because anybody who was arrested for a drug offense and convicted of it, when they got out, they couldn't get any kind of public assistance. They couldn't get help with food stamps. They couldn't live with anyone who was on Section 8. So where do you live? How do you support yourself when you get out of prison and nobody's going to hire you, by the way, because of discrimination in hiring, where on the application they ask you, have you ever been arrested? And they ask you if you've ever been convicted of a crime. Yes, many job applications ask both questions. And if you've ever been arrested arrested, you're automatically disqualified for the job. Who do you think that affected more in an area like where I'm standing right now? White people? No. Because the police, what we call jump out squads here, see, the Clinton policies created or amplified stop and frisk and broken windows policy. We didn't have that here. We had jump out squads. We had the vice squads that would drive through our neighborhoods and see a group of people standing around and literally jump out of the cars and frisk them. We just called it a different name. So if somebody was arrested, they didn't even have to be charged or convicted of a crime. They have an arrest record, automatically disqualified from a job. That happened to a lot of kids I went to high school with. A lot of kids who didn't have the advantage of the summer youth employment program that I had the advantage of participating in when I was in high school. So now when I look at this street that I grew up on and this park that I remember playing in as a kid and going to little concerts in, and my family just hanging out in, and this being a wonderful neighborhood, I look at this and I see the disdain that my government has for people like me who live over here in this area of the city, Southeast DC. Do you know we're less than 10 miles from the U.S. Capitol? We are over here living like we're under siege. And we are less than 10 miles from the people who make the decisions to do this to us and then turn around and tell us that it's our fault. So please understand, real progressives, I don't just blame Hillary Clinton. I don't blame the Republicans who play the race-baiting politics. I don't. I actually don't blame only government, because there is some responsibility that we have to take for this too. But just because there is a part that we have to play in making this better, that doesn't let the government off the hook. And I'm tired of black people saying that just because there are some things we black people can do better, then we can't complain about what the government does. Bull, I pay my taxes. I can complain about what my government does not do for me and my people. And I'm tired of being told that. Neoliberal policies pushed by Democrats, white and black, have served to destroy black communities across this country. We've tried to make the Republicans our enemies for so long, and we've used the Republicans as the scare tactic for why black people should keep voting for Democrats. Well, I'm sorry, they haven't done anything for us either. There are black politicians, Democrats, 10 miles from here, who work in a building 10 miles from here, who have never been to this part of the city, who do not know what it is like to be in your early 20s and to not be able to get a job. You want a job, but you can't get a job because you were arrested by some BS jump out squad that thought you were a criminal or a thug because you were hanging out on a street that you live on. So, real progressives, when I talk about the legacy of Clinton policies, when I talk about the legacy of institutional racism that needs to be combated in this government, I see it every day. I live not too far from here. I never moved too far from my neighborhood because I still love this place. And I still love the people here. There are plenty of people fighting like hell for our neighborhoods. We always have. We never get the recognition that we deserve. The news cameras don't come out here once a month when a couple of pro-black organizations come to this park and clean it up. The news is never out here to publicize that. But every time somebody gets shot, oh my God, every news camera's out here. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you how messed up this neoliberal policy is. An organization of black religious leaders and community leaders went to the White House a few years ago to push a program called Ceasefire. They wanted funding to expand the program nationwide. Ceasefire is a community-based program that deals with and combats violence in urban neighborhoods. And they do it by targeting relationships with the people who are committing the crimes. These people went to the White House, to the Obama White House, to ask for funding to expand this program. Do you know what they were told? By the Obama White House, by Uncle Joe Biden. You know what they were told? There's no political will for programs like this. That's what they were told. But we get the narrative in the media that black people don't do anything about the violence in their neighborhoods. I'm tired of being duped not only by racist conservative policies, I'm also tired of being duped by racist neoliberal policies that tell me that my enemy is only the Republicans. No. My enemy is a government that doesn't give a damn about the people it takes its taxes from. My enemy is a government and its representatives and agents that pushes policies that it knows destroys the lives of people, takes opportunities away from them, or doesn't restore opportunities. Let me tell you something about the 94 crime bill that you may not know. The Congressional Black Caucus actually did oppose the 94 crime bill. Black leaders didn't support that crap. What we wanted was more education funding in our public schools. We wanted more funding for community programs. We wanted more funding for summer jobs programs. We wanted more funding for drug treatment. We wanted more funding for community-based programs like Ceasefire. We had a couple programs like that here in D.C. None of that was included in the 94 crime bill. The Clintons knew that's what we were asking. They didn't include any of it in that bill. The Congressional Black Caucus, in response, introduced their own piece of legislation that didn't get passed. And the Congressional Black Caucus's legislation actually included everything that black people across this country who were dealing with the crack epidemic, Reagan's crappy mental health federal funding policies and social policies and all of the hell that came with that. Their legislation included all of the things we were asking for to combat that on a community level. We were asking for help from the government, and the government didn't help us. And the Obama administration did the exact same thing when he denied, or he didn't push for, let me be accurate. He did not push for additional funding for the expansion of the ceasefire program. What he did was to sign an executive order for expanded background checks at gun shows and a few $100 million for mental health services and research in response to mass shootings. We didn't get an executive order for our programs. So what am I saying, real progressives? What am I saying to you? I am saying that unless you are prepared to fight for policies, politicians, and programs that will improve the lives of everyone, that will include everyone, that will address the problems of people who are hurting, regardless of where they live, how much money they make, or what's in their past. If they want to do better, if your policies are not going to help people who want to do better, then you're no better than the conservatives and the neoliberals who helped us get into this place. I'm mad as hell right now because what I do not want is for this revolution that I believe is so amazing that we have right now to forget about us. I will not stand for another political movement or revolution in this country to leave poor black people out. And I am not going to allow anyone to stand in the way of us getting the justice we deserve. I don't give a damn what party you represent. I don't care whether you're black or white. You will not stand in the way of justice, racial justice, economic justice, social justice for the least of these in this country any longer. And progressives, if you are not gonna fight with us, then get out of our way, because we're tired. I want to see our neighborhoods come back. I don't know if we ever will, but I know that I've seen so many of my people fight so hard for everything we've lost. And I am not going to let anybody tell me that I have to vote for somebody who helped do this. This is Jackie Lukman. Check us out on Coffee, Current Events, and Politics in Lukman Nation, on Twitter at Lukman1, Lukman Nation 1. And please do stick around and keep fighting the real progressives fight. Philadelphia is just the beginning. It cannot end there. Our lives depend on it.